Top of the morning, Dan and Amy, and since we have the nation's attention on race, we should broaden the conversation, not just to talk about class as more of a preeminent issue than race, which we were talking about before Mike Scott's newscast, but also with respect to taking inventory of the state of urban centers, taking inventory with respect to the success of the $30 trillion that we've spent since the Great Society. Has that delivered on the promises that were made? Did the promise of Brown versus Board of Education, has that come true in our nation's K through 12 school systems? What about the business community? Is extending opportunity to those who have not historically enjoyed it or are not enjoying it at present? Is that to come in the form of government mandates? Is that to come in the form of private action? And if it's private action, what form should it take? Somebody who has long been making the case for engagement with black entrepreneurs and the need to extend a culture of entrepreneurship within the black community in America is Robert Blackwell, who's a black entrepreneur himself, successful one, who's here in Chicago. He's the founder and CEO of EKI Digital, which is an IT company, and also the CEO of Killerspin, which is a corporate experiential company centered around ping pong. And he's a ridiculously good, almost Olympic quality ping pong player.
Has he beaten you?
Beat me like a drum.
Really? And you're pretty good at ping pong.
I'm decent. Like I'm like a club ping pong player. This is like professional ranks. This is like somebody who's standing 15 feet behind the table, one of those guys. Robert Blackwell, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning.
Morning. So, in the last couple of weeks, we've heard from some black entrepreneurs, very successful ones. We heard from billionaire Bob Johnson, formerly the founder of the BET network and sold it. And what we heard from him is a call for reparations. He has a specific reparations plan. We heard last week on CNBC from Robert Reffkin, who is a younger entrepreneur. He's the CEO of Compass, which is a pretty sizable real estate brokerage outfit. And he talked about not just the need for entrepreneurship, but specifically what he's doing at Compass, which is to essentially impose 15% quotas privately with his real estate brokers in terms of who they do business with. 15% of the business they do on an annualized basis needs to be with minorities. What do you think about those two contributions to the discussion, and what would you add to or subtract from those contributions?
Well, I don't like to be critical of people, but I'll start with Ruskin. I would say that's a private company. They can do whatever they want to do. I think there's nothing wrong with that. So if it's a private company and you decide that you want to make a contribution, it's one great thing about this country. You can do whatever you want to do. As to Bob Johnson and the reparations, I am not a fan of reparations, not because I don't think there's been damage done to the black community, specifically by the government. And as we come up on the 99th anniversary of the Tulsa massacre, I'm not sure if you've heard of that, but there was a
Wall Street
place called
Black Wall Street, right?
Black Wall Street in Tulsa. It was a pretty affluent, self-sufficient black community. And in 1921, there was a group of white men went and kidnapped a black boy because a white girl, he was standing next to a white girl, she started screaming, and they went and kidnapped him and put him in jail. And the black men of the town, feared that he was going to get lynched or was probably going to happen to him, so they went and rescued him. Well, what happened next is that people in town got guns and went and massacred a number of black people and burned down that part of town. It seems to me that was a failure of government. In our in our country, I would say the number one responsibility of government is to protect its citizens against coercion, both foreign and domestic. Obviously, that's the police and the military. So oftentimes in our country, the police have really failed. The government has failed to do that. There's frankly been lots of cases like that. But I think today around reparations, unfortunately, you can't go back and undo some of the things of the past. But I will say some of the things that people associate benefits that they associate with the black community, the black community never actually gets, specifically minority business programs. I believe most people think that blacks are the ones that benefit from minority business programs. And I've done my own studies of them, and blacks are actually at the bottom of participation in the minority category. So,
and why is that? Why is that?
Why are we at the bottom?
Yeah.
Because I think these programs are mostly fake. They benefit people born outside the United States more than inside the United States. I did just kind of FYI, I did a study of the 2010 census, and these are the numbers of all the companies by ethnicity, with companies with employees. Took all the majority-owned companies, and 9.4 trillion, women $1 trillion, Asians $455 billion, Hispanics $276 billion, and blacks $98 billion. And that $98 billion is not even a real number, because corporations, large corporations, and government to some extent, likes to have big numbers so they can be in the $1 billion roundtable and, have their good guy diversity programs and telling everybody that they care so much. So what they will do is you will take, I don't want to pick on a particular company, but let's say a company that's in transportation. They have a Fortune 500 company that's in transportation or package delivery. Well, they're going to spend billions of dollars on fuel. What they will do is they're going to buy, obviously, jet fuel from a large petroleum company. And what they will do in order to get minority credit is they will take a black company and they say, well, we want to buy $100 million worth of fuel from you. You go buy it from the energy company, and they buy it for $99,750,000. This way, both companies say, oh, we're good corporate citizens. We did $100 million. In the meantime, you got a company with hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue and, a handful of employees. That's how the system works.
But Robert, let me take a step back. But I mean, that's important in terms of the scam that's being run, the perception. $100 million. Well, we did $100 million with that minority-owned company. When, in point of fact, that minority-owned company got a $250,000 profit on one transaction. I mean, so that's a really good illustration of what's happening. But I want to go back to Black Wall Street for a second. So why did Black Wall Street exist in Tulsa in 1921, and it doesn't exist in 2020 America anywhere?
Well, I would say there are two reasons. And Tulsa wasn't the only place. There was a place called Bully, Oklahoma, which was similar. There was
Durham, North Carolina.
In Florida. So you have to ask yourself a question: what happened? Well, if you look at the history of blacks in this country, I don't have to go back to the slavery. Everybody knows about that. Mm-hmm. But in Booker T. Washington, which I believe most people have heard of, was dedicated to black education. And he actually went to, I'd say, the great entrepreneurs of the day, Carnegie, Rockefeller.
Rosenwald.
Yeah, and Rosenwald. So there was a partnership between Booker T. Washington and Rosenwald. And I think this is one of the only, acts of philanthropy that has actually helped anybody.
But we see
Most
that. But we see that today in the form of charter schools, where you have black and white coming together, or Latino and white coming together in terms of money and the students that are being helped.
Yeah, but I would say it's on such a small scale.
True.
I think that is mostly, rich guy. They give $10 million to a school, and then they throw their name on it, and everybody celebrates him as a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, Chicago Public Schools has a $10 billion budget. But none of those things, in my view, compare to the partnership between Rosenwald and Booker T. Washington. Julius Rosenwald was a Jewish immigrant, and he and some other guys said, what is happening to blacks in the United States is wrong. It's what's happening to Jews in Europe, and we should do something. Well, what he did is he partnered with Booker T. Washington, and mostly he was in the background. He put up money, and Julius Rosenwald was the CEO of Sears. He put up money, and they built 5,200 schools.
Right.
The black families that were sent their kids there had to put some money into the schools, and blacks built those schools.
So, so fast forward to today, and what is there anything comparable to that, or a vision for what would be comparable to that in 2020? For example, in Illinois, we've got this, $500 million over 5 years tax credit program where you pool a lot of small dollar donors with big dollar donors to provide scholarships for mostly lower income students, which tend to be disproportionately minority. That's one example of a school choice program. But I know education is not necessarily your sole focus. You're talking about partnerships beyond education in the business world.
Well, here's what I think. I think if you look at history and you look at how people go from poverty to prosperity, first of all, you have to ask yourself a question. Where in the world are poor people healthy, educated, and safe? The answer is nowhere. Conversely, where are affluent people not healthy, educated, and safe? The answer is nowhere. So how do people go from poverty to prosperity? There's a pathway. It is entrepreneurial-led economic activity that leads to the appreciation of education. So it is a fallacy that education leads. Education doesn't lead. It is entrepreneurial participation that leads. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about from a community that creates the appreciation of education, and then social capital. Social capital is when you reach back and you pull people along from your own community, but more importantly, you create an aspirational roadmap for your young people so they know where to place their bets. So if you just try this experiment, name 2 famous black entrepreneurs that don't have anything to do with entertainment. Almost nobody can do it because there aren't any. There's a couple. There's one now who's become prominent, Robert Smith, who's a finance guy.
Right.
But in general, black kids, all they see is entertainment, which I'm including sports and entertainment. Now, if I was to ask you then to name some wealthy black entertainers or people that came out of sports, we would be talking all day. So the market is telling black kids, place your bet on entertainment. The same way it tells Dominican kids, place your bet on baseball, or Brazilian kids to place their bets on soccer, or Jamaican kids to place their bet on track, or Canadian kids to place their bet on hockey.
And then the social capital you're talking about. So then the give back. What is that telling kids to place their bets? It's after school programs through somebody's foundation. It's giving Chance the Rapper giving to the Chicago public school system. Place your bet on government. Where is the give back? Where's the expenditure of social capital in the direction of developing entrepreneurs?
Well, there's a difference between charity and social capital. Charity and social capital are not the same thing. Social capital is when you you create opportunities for people. Not that you give a bunch of charity.
No, I understand. I understand, but I mean, but they're going in the same direction. The opportunities that are being extended, if it follows the checks that are being written, and so what direction are those going? I mean, for those who have the means and the platform, it doesn't seem to me like it's a focus on entrepreneurship. It's a focus on the social capital is essentially being used in the same way that the money is, as charity rather than as extending opportunity.
I think it's correct. I think there would be a lot bigger payoff if people just did business. That's it. You do business with people that have some capability. And I'll give you an example. There was a really large company based in Cincinnati. And I got to know the chairman because he asked me to be on the board of a not-for-profit board. And of course, I'm the only libertarian on that board. And I told him about how fake the minority business programs are. And he said, no, our company is we're really committed. We're really committed to these diversity minority programs. And I said, well, I don't think so, but we'll see. So he said, no, I'm going to prove it to you. And he took me to meet their CIO, the black lady, and their head of diversity. And frankly, most people, black people who are in business, whenever you get pushed to the diversity coordinator, you know you're in trouble. So long story short, went and met with her, and kind of after the meeting, she told me just directly. She said, Robert, you know what? We don't do business with black people. The black lady told me this. And she said, because every time we do business with them, it never works out. And I said, well, let me guess why. You got a diversity program. You paid somebody $60,000 to teach people how to be in business. And then the people that come out of that don't know how to do business. She said, oh, yeah, how'd you know that? Mm-hmm. I said, because that's how it works. Why don't you go and find somebody that has figured out how to be in business? I've never met an entrepreneur that came out of an entrepreneurial program.
Well, so last question, unfortunately, then we got to run. But you've identified the problem and the fraud that's being perpetrated, and that's important. So then, for those who are truly interested, entrepreneurs truly interested in providing social capital to black entrepreneurs, part of the problem, as far as from my perspective, is genuine interest, genuine openness, and just can't find the intersection point. How do I get to the Robert Blackwell in every sector of business in America?
I would say this, so I'll keep this short. There's a group called the Business Leadership Council here in Chicago. The website's blcchicago.com. And we have something called the Lead Partner Program. The way the Lead Partner Program works, it says just do business with a black company in a meaningful way. And then the black company has three responsibilities. One is to identify a clear value proposition for your customer, because if you can't do that, you can't be in business. And then because you got a special opportunity, you should take on some special responsibility. So you would then have to take on the role of the mentor, so bring some preferably younger black companies into your deal. And then 3, take on some community enrichment responsibility. Things we do is we have a mowers and blowers program, kind of help give microfinance for people who are doing landscaping businesses. We're going to be doing a housing for tutoring exchange where we give honorable black college students a place to live in exchange for mentoring and tutoring elementary and high school kids. I've helped a number of younger black talented people in tech start their companies. So there are talented blacks out there. The problem is you cannot have a business without a customer. And if you're black, people look at you like you're a child, unfortunately, and you have to go through one of their, it's like people cannot believe that you can do anything without some special rich guy program that you have to go through. And I think that is why we don't have Black Wall Street anymore, because people don't do business.
The website, blcchicago.com?
Yes, sir.
blcchicago.com, the lead partner program. I know we've spoken about that before as well. Robert Blackwell, wish we had more time, but thanks so much for joining us. Founder and CEO of EKI Digital, CEO of Killerspin. Robert Blackwell, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Always good to talk to you. Thank you.
Take care.
I learned a lot. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line. Coming up on Chicago's Morning Answer.
We'll talk a little bit more about economics and COVID-19 with Phil Kerpen, president of the American Commitment, at 7:07.
And Roger Goodell needs to stop the pandering. But now let's head straight into that newsroom. News from here at home and around the world. Here is Mike Scott. Good morning, Mike.
Amy and Dan, good morning. More charges expected against a former state